September 17th, 1944. A slight morning haze dusts fields and air bases in England. As it begins to clear with the warmth of the sun, it reveals a glorious sunny day, perfect for air operations. By mid-morning, the first planes and gliders packed full of paratroopers are ascending into clear skies as Operation Market Garden gets underway. However, weather over the British Isles is anything but predictable, as any one of those many pilots and paratroopers will tell you. Fortune may favour the bold, but British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery may be about to find that fortune, like the British weather, can be rather fickle indeed. The assault begins in the early afternoon of September 17th. Morning mist is the only dampener on an otherwise gloriously bright and clear day, and over 1,500 transport aircraft and hundreds of gliders cross the channel in waves, landing troops along the planned corridor from Eindhoven to Arnhem. By the time the planes are over occupied Netherlands, any mist has fully dissipated. At the southern end, the US 101st Airborne Division dropped north of Eindhoven. 2 regiments on clear ground west of Zone, while the final regiment drops to envelop Veghel from the west and south. The landings are largely successful, with only light opposition from German security and training units, and 6,700 troops assemble in their drop zones before pushing out. Resistance remains light up until they reach the northern edge of Zone. Although the division will soon secure Eindhoven proper, the main bridge at Zone is blown by German engineers before it can be captured, with American troops just 50 meters away. The 101st phones the news to 30 Corps, and the necessary bridging equipment is sent forward. Further north, the US 82nd Airborne Division drop between Grave and Nijmegen, with one notable exception, Echo Company 504th Regiment, whose drop zone lies slightly west of Grave. The rest of the regiment drops the other side of Grave, and the remaining 2 regiments further east at the Groesbeek Heights. They quickly overwhelm the defenders of the Maas Bridge at Grave, capturing it intact in 3 hours. They also secure the high ground at Groesbeek to guard against a potential counterattack from the Rijkswald Forest. At Nijmegen itself, the Germans, elements of hastily formed Kampfgruppe Henke and later reinforcements, successfully hold the crucial Vaal Road Bridge. The 82nd's initial efforts to seize it fail, and Nijmegen remains contested. At the northern end, the British 1st Airborne Division deploy at a mix of drop zones to the north of the Rhine, with Polish support to arrive in a couple of days. The initial drop goes smoothly, but the distance from the landing zones to the Rhine Bridge creates delays in seizing the bridges. Only 1 battalion, 2 para, under Lieutenant Colonel John Frost reaches the bridge on the first day, occupying buildings at its northern end as SS Panzer Grenadiers begin arriving south of the bridge. The rest of the British division converges on Arnhem, but encounters mounting resistance from German units of 2nd SS Panzer Corps which stop all progress. SS Kampfgruppe Spindler, formed from elements of the SS 9th Panzer Division Hohenstaufen, positions itself on the Ede-Arnhem Road, preventing the bulk of British force from linking up with Frost's battalion, which is now coming under heavy attack by SS forces. D-Day +1, September 18th. The airborne divisions await their reinforcements in today's drops. Across most of Western Europe, the weather remains pleasant today, though in England, low cloud and thick fog begin spreading across the country, causing takeoff delays at some air bases. The 101st Airborne Division receive an additional 2,500 men, plus jeeps and trailers today. Their arrival is timely, as the 101st comes under attack from General Walter Popper's 59th Infantry Division, which began arriving last night around Boxtel and Tilburg. German Commander Kurt Student throws him into battle against the 101st Airborne at Zone, attempting to recapture the riverbank there which was seized yesterday. The 101st successfully beat them back, but the fighting is bitter. At 1900 today, the Guards Armoured Division, the leading element of the British 30 Corps, arrives at Eindhoven and links up with the 101st. They bring with them the bridging equipment necessary to get the advance rolling again. The 101st have been able to install a temporary footbridge capable of bringing infantry across to help with defending the crossing points, and the British engineers set to work installing the more substantial bridge upon arrival. The 82nd Airborne Division received 1,800 reinforcements by glider, strengthening their hold on the Groesbeek Heights. This position proves essential, as German forces, spearheaded by elements of the 406th Division, attacked from the Rijkswald Forest towards Nijmegen, running into the 82nd Airborne at the Groesbeek Heights. The assaults are beaten back, but the 82nd are forced to prioritize defense instead of seizure of the Nijmegen bridge. The delay gives German defenders time to reinforce the bridge further. At Arnhem, the 1st Airborne Division suffers the most today. The poor weather across England continues, and the low cloud and fog still prevents mass takeoffs, ultimately delaying their second lift until much later in the day. The Germans are now fully alert to what's happening. Documents and maps taken from captured British troops reveal some drop in supply zones, and SS troops rush infantry and AA guns to those areas. Only a portion of the reinforcements arrive today, and opposition from the 9th and 10th Panzer Divisions stiffens. The 4th Parachute Brigade under John Hackett drop at Zone Y at Hinkle Heath and find German troops waiting for them. They had been hoping to push east after dropping to cut the road north of Arnhem and prevent German reinforcements from arriving, but quickly come to realize that the main German threat is already in and around the town. They spent the night more or less pinned near their drop zone by heavy machine gun fire from Johannahover Farm. Frost's battalion remains isolated at the bridge, holding against repeated tank and infantry attacks, but the rest of the division remains cut off around Oosterbeek. Communications between units begins breaking down, and supplies are scarce. Many radio sets issued to the 1st Airborne are very short range and temperamental. As the division has been unable to link up as planned, subunits are having trouble reaching the divisional HQ, and the divisional HQ is unable to properly contact Corps HQ. The hoped-for rapid seizure of the bridgehead across the Rhine is, by now, slipping away. D-Day +2, September 19th. The thick fog and clouds which blanketed England yesterday moved towards continental Europe. Many flights, including roughly half of those destined for the Arnhem sector, are today forced to abort their mission while crossing the Channel and return to base. The planned insertion of the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade is delayed until the weather clears. In the south, the 101st Airborne Division continues to secure bridges around Eindhoven and Zon. The military bridge being deployed at Zone is completed this morning at 6:45, and British tanks get rolling north once again. Sporadic German attacks along the route threaten progress, but the Guards Armoured Division makes swift advances and reaches Trava by 08:30 and Nijmegen by midday. They now link up with the 82nd Airborne Division. By now, the German forces defending the Waal Bridge, a mix of poor-quality troops under Kampfgruppe Henke and troops of SS 10th Panzer Division, have the southern approach locked down. The SS troops are reinforced by a Panzer Grenadier Battalion under Karl-Heinz Uhling, which has disengaged from the fighting around Arnhem and rushed south to delay the Allied reinforcements heading north. Uhling's reinforcements bring SS strength here up to an estimated 500 troops, backed by artillery and panzers. 82nd Airborne, backed by British tanks, attack towards the crossing and make good progress before being stopped abruptly less than half a kilometre from the river. They end the day here, but they have plans for tomorrow. Speaking to 30 Corps Commander Brian Horrocks, 82nd Airborne Commander James Gavin proposes a daring river crossing by his paratroopers to seize the northern bank and avoid having to attack across the bridge. Such an idea is completely out of the 82nd's wheelhouse, but everyone involved knows that speed is of the utmost importance. Horrocks finds some 28 canvas and plywood craft from 30 Corps stocks and has them sent north to the front with all haste. At Arnhem, the situation worsens. 4 battalions attempt to push through Arnhem to link up with Frost's unit, although by now SS troops have all the main approaches locked down. The 4 battalions are scattered and are forced to retreat by mid-afternoon. The 1st and 3rd Parachute Battalions are basically destroyed fighting around Utrechtseweg and St. Elizabeth Hospital. Frost's force at the bridge holds on for today, but remain isolated and under heavy fire. D-Day +3, September 20th. Low cloud and persistent fog continues to blanket much of Western Europe, and further drops of troops and supplies remain almost impossible, although close air support in some areas remains just about viable. Dropping bombs requires a lot less precision than dropping people, after all. German defenders at the Waal Bridge continue to hold their objectives throughout the morning and early afternoon hours. British Typhoons have been brought in to bombard the northern bank ahead of the crossing, but at the planned jumping off time, 1 p.m, the boats have still not arrived at the front line. At 2:30 p.m, the Typhoons are approaching Bingo Fuel, the point at which they must drop what they're carrying and return to base, or risk running out of gas. They deploy their payload on the German positions and head home. Almost immediately after, the trucks containing the boats arrive, and the 504th Regiment from 82nd Airborne manage to begin their crossing around 3 p.m. The first troops arrive on the northern bank shortly after 3:30 p.m. Casualties are severe, but the crossing allows the bridge to be taken quickly by an assault from both north and south, and by around 7 p.m, British tanks are once again rolling north. Arnhem is now only a short drive away for 30 Corps, but Frost's battalion defending the Rhine Bridge may not even have that long left. There, the crisis deepens. Colonel Frost's battalion, isolated at the north end of the bridge, faced continuous German assaults throughout the day, supported by armour from the 9th SS Panzer Division. Their ammunition by now is all but exhausted, and casualties are approaching intolerable levels. An accurate picture of casualties at this time is hard to discern, such is the intensity and chaos of the fighting, but some estimates suggest that no more than 200 of the roughly 650 men who made it to the bridge are still standing. By nightfall on the 20th, their position is on the verge of collapse. The remainder of the 1st Airborne, cut off west of Arnhem around Oosterbeek, face mounting pressure and are stuck firmly on the defensive now, unable to try another push to Frost's position. D-Day +4, September 21st. The weather situation improves somewhat. Although some fog and mist persists around Arnhem, it's now clear that the Polish paradrop can finally go ahead. Unfortunately for the Allies, this is also the moment where the situation at the Arnhem Bridge finally collapses. Colonel Frost's 2nd Parachute Battalion, holding the north end of the bridge, is overwhelmed. Ammunition there has been fully exhausted, and the buildings are in flames due to German incendiary rounds. Many wounded have already been evacuated during short truces, including Frost himself, to save their lives from the flames. Only scattered groups managed to fight their way out in the direction of Oosterbeek. The Arnhem Bridge, central objective of the operation, falls into SS hands. South of the Rhine, the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade managed to drop to reinforce the British. Now, with the German defense network fully operational and on alert, their landing attempt is met with anti-air fire and Luftwaffe interceptors. They are scattered upon arrival and fight their way back together to link up, and form a bridgehead south of the Rhine at Driel. A ferry, which they had hoped would permit them to cross the Rhine, cannot be located, however, and the rubber boats the brigade carries are insufficient to attempt a crossing under heavy fire. An attempt is to be made regardless. Reinforcement by 30 Corps, which may have provided supporting fire for a crossing, proves to be impossible, as their advance is stopped at the town of Elst by Kampfgruppe Naust, a formation of 10th SS Panzer with Tigers and Panthers, relocated rapidly from the Arnhem Bridge battle to block the British advance. Near Oosterbeek, the remainder of the 1st Airborne Division has contracted into a horseshoe-shaped defensive perimeter, headquartered at the Hartenstein Hotel in Oosterbeek. Survivors of the 1st, 3rd and 11th Parachute Battalions are the main force holding the east, facing down the main assaults of SS Panzer. The western approaches are held by mixed units of engineers, medical detachments and survivors of scattered battalions. Those forces are under attack from Division von Tettau, a hastily formed German response force composed of regional defense and training units. The overall perimeter falls under constant artillery, mortar and tank fire, as 9th SS Panzer increasingly throws its weight behind assaults, and 10th SS Panzer turns its attention southwards to 30 Corps. D-Day +5, September 22nd. Named Black Friday by those on the ground, though not purely because of the bitter fighting. A misty and drizzly morning in Arnhem gives way to pockets of storms which dominate the skies over both England and the Netherlands, grounding almost all air traffic today. The Polish attempt to cross the Rhine in numbers fails under heavy German fire, with only dozens making it across to the northern bank by this morning. Further south, constant attacks by German forces along the Eindhoven-Nijmegen-Arnhem road further frustrate the passage of British troops northwards. An attack today by elements of the German 86th Corps and 10th SS Panzer strikes Vechel, throwing SS tanks and Wehrmacht infantry at the town from the east in Kampfgruppe Walther, while troops of the 59th Division, Kampfgruppe Huber, strike from the west. The road is cut for the rest of today, and British armoured units which are desperately needed to push the line forward at Elst are forced to hold position. The first elements of 30 Corps do link up with Polish forces today, however, though at first this is merely 2 scout cars and 2 armoured cars which have slipped through the German lines. British ground forces have now finally technically made their link-up, 4 days and 18 hours behind schedule. Allied forces at Driel are later joined today by the 214th Battalion, 43rd Wessex Division, who work their way around Elst and fight their way through to Driel. The road remains entirely blocked to tanks. D-Day +6, September 23rd. The worst of the stormy weather has now passed. though visibility remains poor and the winds remain powerful. This is enough, at least, for air supply to resume. However, airdrops at Arnhem for the entire operation have proven disastrous, and now supplies begin to reach critically low levels. Supply drop points were positioned near the original landing locations, which have long since fallen into German hands. Breakdown in radio communication has left 1st Airborne unable to transmit new coordinates to command, and German units have used captured British signals to deceive incoming planes into dropping their supply loads as normal. As a result, of the 390 tons of supply and ammunition dropped by today, 359 tons has unwittingly been given to the Germans. The defending British troops are now starving, lacking ammunition, and unable to practice even basic hygiene due to water shortages, increasing the risk of infection among the wounded and sickness in the ranks. By today, the 43rd Wessex Division has penned in the German troops holding Elst, and infantry can now reliably work their way around to Driel. A river crossing with assault boats is planned for tomorrow, at this point to relieve 1st Airborne rather than making a serious bid for the Arnhem Bridge. D-Day +7, September 24th. Weather remains poor, and strong winds and rain are forecast to dominate the Arnhem sector both tonight and tomorrow. On the ground, 2 truckloads of assault boats bound for Driel go missing, severely limiting the number of available craft for the river crossing. The task is given to 4th Battalion, the Dorsetshire Regiment, to use what boats are available and link up with the 200 or so Polish who have made it across piecemeal in the past few days. Around 400 men of 4th Battalion take to the river, but strong currents and German defensive fire make the crossing extremely arduous. Only around 250 make it to the northern bank, still insufficient numbers to attempt meaningful relief of 1st Airborne. Tonight, the link-up is officially called off by General Miles Dempsey of the British Second Army, and an evacuation is ordered. D-Day +8, September 25th. Major General Urquhart receives word of the evacuation plan this morning just after 6 a.m. He orders his men to proceed as normal, continuing to guard German POWs and transmitting standard radio communications, preserving total secrecy. After nightfall at 9 p.m., British artillery on the southern bank of the Rhine opens up on German troops, and at 9:45 the evacuation begins. In complete silence and darkness, the troops of 1st Airborne and their relief from 43rd Wessex and 1st Polish Parachute Brigade begin moving south, holding on to the man in front of them as their only guidance in the darkness, forbidden to speak or even return fire unless absolutely necessary. The wind and rain for once is actually helpful, muffling sounds and reducing visibility on the ground. A small fleet of assault boats awaits him at the river and begin ferrying them to the south bank in the darkness, continuing to take casualties from German fire guided by flares. In the morning, German troops walk into former British positions at Austerbeek to find them empty, save for the dead, the critically wounded, and a handful of medical personnel continuing to tend injuries. The fighting has been intensely bitter, and casualties on both sides have been enormous. In the sectors where the Allies have been most successful, at Eindhoven and Nijmegen, the 2 US divisions still report a combined casualty figure of 3,550 dead, wounded and missing, 1,432 for the 82nd, and 2,118 for the 101st. The heaviest fighting has of course been at Arnhem, and this is where we see the truly horrific numbers. Of the 10,005 men of the British 1st Airborne Division that went into Arnhem, 2,163 returned southwards across the Rhine, with around 1,200 confirmed dead, and the remainder, some 6,642 men, unaccounted for and presumed dead or captured. Of the approximately 200 Poles of the 1st Independent Parachute Brigade and 250 Brits of the Dorsetshire Regiment that crossed the river to relieve the paratroopers, only 160 Poles and 75 Dorsets returned to the southern bank. 30 Corps report a further 1,480 personnel losses and 70 tanks in their own drive north. German casualties, owing to the floundering military bureaucracy in the Reich at this time, are harder to discern. Some of the only official figures to be released by the German Army Group B suggest 3,300 casualties in the Arnhem-Austerbeek area, including between 1,100 and 1,300 dead. Of course, this only encapsulates a small proportion of the operation, but this is likely a gross underestimate, even in just the Arnhem sector. Post-war estimates suggest a more accurate figure would be around 1,700 dead and 3,000 to 3,500 wounded, or even higher. Another 7,500 to 10,000 German casualties are estimated along the rest of the route, in combat with the US 82nd and 101st Airborne, as well as British units of 30 Corps, bringing a high-end estimate of 15,200 casualties total. Though, whatever the true number, the Germans have successfully plugged the gap. All Allied divisions involved have fought well, but failed to achieve their ambitious objectives. The British 1st Airborne Division in particular now finds itself shattered, a mere 20% of its men returning to Allied lines. The road to the Ruhr and beyond remains closed for now, but just barely. What sort of difference could a small bit of fortune have made? Had the weather held up? Had the bridges at Zone and Nijmegen been captured intact and immediately? Had the Polish brigade been able to deploy as planned? Would we now be talking about a stroke of utter military genius, rather than an incredibly expensive failure? Well, no matter. Because here on TimeGhost Cartographic, we deal not in speculation, but in reality. And the only reality now is that Monty has had his moment and squandered it. When Allied forces get moving again, they'll be doing things Eisenhower's way. Some drops are still worth doing though. You can drop a like on this video, for instance, or drop along to our Patreon and join the TimeGhost army at patreon.com/TimeGhostHistory, or directly on our website at timeghost.tv. We're loving creating these videos, and we're loving that you're loving them too. All the best from us at TimeGhost. See you next episode on another battle and in a different time.